The weeks that followed blurred into a rhythm Zariah had never known, one of peace laced with purpose. For the first time since her world had collapsed, she woke without the weight of dread pressing down on her chest. Her mornings began with quiet coffee on the penthouse balcony, the Shanghai skyline spilling out before her like an endless promise. Afternoons were for classes, private lectures arranged by Junjie's network of professors who treated her not as a charity case, but as someone worth investing in. Evenings were unpredictable, sometimes a gala, sometimes strategy meetings, sometimes nothing more than the two of them sprawled across the sofa with a bottle of wine between them, arguing about the endings of old films. Junjie still kept his distance in certain ways, measured touches, half-smiles instead of declarations, but the distance was shrinking. She caught it in the way his hand lingered on her lower back when they walked through a crowd, in the way he listened when she spoke, absorbing every detail as though her words were blueprints for a future he was already building. And she was thriving. Her professors praised her work ethic. Her sister's paintings were now displayed in a small downtown gallery Junjie had quietly purchased to ensure her art had a home, and her mother's health was steadily improving. Even the sharp edges of her grief had dulled to something manageable. But danger hadn't disappeared. It had simply gone quiet. One Friday night, Zariah returned from class to find Junjie in the study, sleeves rolled up, his tie discarded. He looked tired, the kind of tired that wasn't from lack of sleep but from carrying a burden too heavy for anyone to see. "You're early," he said without looking up. "I skipped dinner with my classmates. Didn't feel like pretending to be okay when I'm not." His head lifted at that. What happened? She hesitated, then sat across from him. "Someone slipped a note into my bag. No name. Just 2 words, he's lying." The muscle in Junjie's jaw twitched. "Did you keep it?" She slid it across the desk. He didn't read it immediately, just stared at it as if he already knew what it said. "Zariah," he began carefully, "there are things I haven't told you. Not because I wanted to keep them from you, but because timing matters." Her pulse quickened. What things? Before he could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and something in his expression shifted to steel. "I have to take this," he said, standing. "Stay here." But Zariah didn't stay. The moment he stepped into the hallway, her gaze fell on a manila folder half-tucked beneath a stack of files. Her name was printed across the tab in neat, precise letters. She told herself not to touch it. She told herself she trusted him. But her hand was already pulling it free. Inside were surveillance photos, not of Li Junjie, not of Mei Lin, but of her. Years' worth. Some from before she'd even met Junjie. Her in Ghana. Her at the university. Her at a family barbecue in Nigeria. And clipped to the final photo, taken just a month before her marriage, was a note in Mandarin. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the signature at the bottom. Li Junjie. Her blood went cold. When he returned, she was still holding the folder. He froze in the doorway. "You were watching me," she said, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "I was protecting you," he replied, just as steady. "Long before you knew you needed it." "That's not protection," she snapped. "That's control." "Zariah." "No," she cut in, stepping back. "You don't get to decide when I learn the truth. You don't get to play God with my life." His eyes softened, but his voice was unyielding. "If I hadn't been watching, you'd be dead. That alley. That wasn't chance. They were already closing in." The words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. And yet, something in her had shifted. She wasn't the same woman who had stepped into this marriage broken and desperate. She had rebuilt herself with his help, but also in spite of him. "I'm not walking away," she said finally. "But from now on, Junjie, I'm in this war on my terms. No more secrets." His gaze held hers for a long moment before he nodded once. "Then we burn every bridge between us and them." She didn't know yet that the note in her bag hadn't come from Li Junjie. It had come from someone far more dangerous. And they were already inside the city. The next morning, Zariah's security detail reported a breach in the building's lobby. A woman had walked straight past the front desk, left an envelope at the concierge, and disappeared before cameras could catch her face. Inside was a single chess piece, the Black Queen. And beneath it, a note. "You've been protecting the wrong side." Junjie read the note twice before tossing it into the fireplace. "She's playing games," he muttered. "She?" Zariah pressed. He hesitated a fraction too long. "An old enemy. She's nothing." Zariah stepped forward, crossing her arms. "I told you, no more secrets. If she's watching us, she's not nothing." His jaw clenched. "She's dangerous because she doesn't care who she burns. And she used to work for me." That night, Zariah's phone buzzed while Junjie was in a meeting. It was an email from an unknown sender. Subject line: "You deserve the truth." Attached was a photo. Junjie, years younger, shaking hands with Li Junjie over a contract. The timestamp was 3 months before she'd even met either of them. Instead of confronting Junjie immediately, Zariah met with their legal team the next day under the pretext of discussing her university paperwork. She asked them for a full history of Junjie's business alliances, and paid particular attention to the years before their marriage. If she was going to stand beside him, she needed to know what she was standing in. 2 nights later, they attended another high-profile event. Zariah arrived in a white satin gown that turned every head in the room. Mei Lin was there, smiling like a cat that knew where the mice were hiding. As Zariah passed her, Mei Lin whispered, "Ask him about the deal in Hong Kong. See if he still lies to your face." Zariah didn't react. But when she reached Junjie, she slid her arm into his and smiled sweetly. "We need to talk. Alone." On the balcony, with the city glittering below, she showed him the photo from the email. "I'm not your enemy, Zariah," he said quietly. "But I've done things, made deals, that kept me alive, that kept me in power. You want to fight this war? Then understand, there's no such thing as clean hands." She stared at him for a long moment before saying, "Then I'll get my hands dirty too." 3 days later, Junjie's security intercepted an intruder in the penthouse parking garage. It wasn't Li Junjie. It was Zariah's former roommate from Ghana, Aisha. And when they brought her upstairs, Aisha looked Zariah in the eye and said, "I've been sent to get you out. Junjie isn't who you think he is. And if you don't leave with me tonight, you won't get another chance." Junjie dismissed his guards, but his eyes never left Aisha. "Who sent you?" he demanded. Aisha's gaze flicked between them. "Someone who's been watching you both. Someone who knows Junjie's deals are more tangled than you think. And they have proof, enough to destroy him." Later that night, Zariah sat at the edge of her bed, her mind spinning. Aisha had been her lifeline during her early years in Ghana. If she had risked this much to warn her, it meant something was real. But Junjie had bled for her, protected her family. How could she reconcile both truths? When she finally confronted him, Junjie didn't deny knowing the people behind the threats. "Every enemy I've made, I made protecting what's mine," he said. "If you leave with her, you won't make it 2 days before they use you against me." His voice was low, almost pleading. "I'd rather you hate me here than love me in a grave." Zariah didn't answer him immediately. Instead, she began quietly moving some of her personal items to the penthouse's safe. If she stayed, she would do it on her terms, prepared for the moment when even Junjie's protection wasn't enough. The next morning, Aisha slipped Zariah a flash drive. "Watch this alone," she whispered. When Zariah did, her hands shook. The video showed Junjie at a private auction years ago, bidding on a confiscated shipment of weapons. Standing beside him was the same woman who'd left the Black Queen chess piece. That night, Junjie reached for her in bed, but she turned away. He didn't press her, just lay still in the dark. She could feel the distance between them widening like a crack in glass. At another society event, Mei Lin cornered Zariah in the ladies' lounge. "You think you've won because he bought you gowns and a penthouse," she sneered. I've seen him tear people apart to protect himself. When he decides you're a liability, you'll be next." Instead of snapping back, Zariah simply smiled. "Then I'll make sure I'm too valuable to destroy." The words surprised even her, but they felt right. Back at the penthouse, Junjie poured them both a drink and, for the first time, told her about the woman with the black queen chess piece. "She was my second in command. I trusted her more than anyone, until she sold my secrets to the highest bidder. She's been trying to dismantle me ever since." Their conversation ended with an argument. Heated, frustrated, but alive. And when Junjie finally kissed her, it was sharp, desperate, like he was holding on to the one thing in his world he couldn't control. She kissed him back with equal fire, even as her mind whispered she still didn't have the full truth. 3 days later, Junjie's name exploded across business news. Shanghai mogul tied to illegal arms auction. The article contained stills from the same video Aisha had given Zariah. Reporters swarmed the penthouse building. Junjie wanted her to stay hidden, but Zariah stepped out onto the balcony in full view of the cameras, wearing a crimson dress and diamond earrings. She placed her hand on Junjie's shoulder for the world to see, an image of unity, even as her trust faltered inside. That night, Junjie came to her study. "There's something you don't know," he said, holding a folder. Inside were documents proving the auction was a sting operation he'd organized with international law enforcement to dismantle a smuggling ring. But the kicker. The person funding the smear campaign against him wasn't just Li Junjie. It was Aisha. The sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Junjie's penthouse, turning the marble floors to liquid gold. Zariah, still in her silk robe, nursed a mug of coffee she barely tasted. Junjie was in his study with the door shut, voice low on a call in Mandarin. She caught fragments, sharp, clipped words, and the faint tension in his jaw before he closed the door entirely. Her phone buzzed. It was from an unknown number. "She's not who you think she is. Check your email." Zariah's fingers trembled as she opened her inbox. There were photos, grainy but clear enough, showing Aisha at a dimly lit restaurant with Mei Lin, her ex-best friend. Their heads leaned together in a conspiratorial way, papers on the table between them. Zariah sat back on the couch, the blood roaring in her ears. Every memory of Aisha's comfort during her hard times suddenly felt poisoned. Her hugs, her tears, her words about loyalty. Had she been playing both sides the whole time? Junjie emerged from his study, sensing her turmoil immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp beneath the surface. She showed him the email. His gaze darkened, but instead of reacting explosively, he stepped closer and took her phone. "This isn't random," he said. "Someone wanted you to see this today." "She knew," Zariah whispered. "She was part of all of it." Junjie's hand rested on her shoulder, steady but unyielding. "Then we use her. If she's already in their pocket, we make her think she's still playing you, while we turn the board." Zariah met his eyes, torn between rage and a cold, calculating resolve she'd never felt before. For once, their hearts and strategies aligned. The moment Zariah and Junjie agreed to turn the board on Aisha, the city outside seemed to change. Colder, sharper, as if every shadow had been assigned a pair of eyes. The next morning, rain painted thin silver lines down the penthouse windows. Zariah stood barefoot on the marble floor, her silk robe brushing against her calves, fingers curled around a warm mug. For a moment, the scene was peaceful, the skyline hazy, the streets below softened by mist. Then she saw it, a faint red dot flickering on the glass of the high-rise across from them. It danced, jittered, and then disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Her breath caught. She told herself it was a reflection, a trick of light. But her gut twisted in quiet warning. She had barely set her mug down when her phone rang, the screen flashing an international number she didn't recognize. Her thumb hovered over the green icon before she pulled it back, letting it ring out. A single message arrived seconds later. "If you want to live, meet me at the Pearl Lantern Cafe. Noon. Alone." She read it 3 times, feeling the rain outside suddenly colder, heavier. On her way to change for class, she passed Junjie's study. The door was slightly ajar. His voice drifted through, calm, clipped, and rapid in Mandarin. She didn't understand the words, but she caught one clearly, Queen. He paused after saying it, like the word itself carried weight. She lingered in the hall, heart pounding, before slipping away before he could notice. That evening, her sister called from the gallery. Her voice trembled slightly. Z, there was a man here today. He didn't say much. Just stood in front of my paintings for a long time. Smiled. Then he left an envelope with my name on it. Inside, she explained, had been a small black pawn chess piece. Its base heavy, cold, and weighted with lead. Zariah's hand tightened around her phone. The next day, despite her instincts, Zariah went to the Pearl Lantern Cafe. The warm scent of jasmine tea filled the air, but the place felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. No one sat at the table reserved under her name. The waiter approached and slid a folded napkin toward her without a word. Inside was an address, a hotel name, and a single keycard. She went. She told herself it was reckless, but she went. Room 1904 was unlocked. Inside, the curtains were drawn tight, the air thick with the scent of dust and disuse. The only thing in the room was a television on mute, looping grainy footage of her, walking into the penthouse lobby, leaving for class, standing in the gallery. The angles were all wrong for Junjie's security cameras. Whoever had filmed this was closer. Much closer. Later that evening, Junjie picked her up in the black sedan. She said nothing, until she caught sight of the hotel keycard's reflection in the tinted window as it slipped from her coat pocket. Junjie's gaze flicked down, then back to the road. His hands tightened on the wheel. Where did you get that? Her silence was her only answer. That night, Junjie hosted a private dinner for two of his oldest allies. Crystal glasses chimed, the air fragrant with roasted duck and five-spice wine. Midway through the evening, the elevator doors opened without warning, and Aisha stepped out. She wore a sleek black dress and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. They all sat. Conversation flowed politely, but Zariah felt something cold brush her ankle. She looked down. A small blade pressed lightly against her skin. Aisha's hand rested casually on her lap above it, her nails tapping in rhythm. Her lips didn't move, but Zariah read them. Not here. After dinner, Aisha joined Zariah on the balcony. She lit a cigarette, the ember flaring in the dim light. You think he's your savior, Z? He built the cage you live in. I'm giving you the key. But you'll have to burn with me to use it. Her eyes glinted like she was daring Zariah to choose. Long after midnight, restless, Zariah searched Junjie's study. Behind a false panel in the desk, she found a stack of letters. Old, yellowed, and written in her father's handwriting. All were addressed to L. None had ever been sent to her. The next day, at her sister's gallery, Zariah saw a tall man with a jagged scar running along his jawline. He studied a painting, then glanced at her. His lips shaped a single word before he walked out into the rain. Run. Through a trusted professor, she gained access to an archive of old business journals. Buried inside was a photograph of Junjie and her father outside a warehouse in Accra, the caption calling them partners. That evening, Junjie took her to a dinner with foreign investors. A tall woman in a midnight blue gown wore a necklace shaped like a black queen chess piece. When their eyes met, she smiled like she knew a secret Zariah didn't. Later, while Junjie showered, Zariah accessed the penthouse safe. Beneath stacks of cash and legal documents, she found a sealed envelope labeled in Junjie's precise handwriting, to be opened if she chooses them. When Junjie found her holding it, the mask slipped. You don't get to test me, he said sharply. You've been testing me since the day we met, she shot back. They didn't speak for hours. The following afternoon, Aisha met her in a dimly lit underground parking lot. I can prove he had your father killed, she said, sliding a flash drive into Zariah's palm. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Alone in her room, Zariah plugged it in. The grainy footage showed Junjie's car at the docks the night her father's body was found in the river. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his face in shadow. The resemblance was undeniable. At another gala, Mei Lin brushed past her, the scent of jasmine perfume lingering. "The man in that video isn't Junjie," she murmured. "But he took the blame for the real killer, to protect you." That night, back at the penthouse, Zariah confronted Junjie with the footage. His silence was unreadable. Without a word, he opened the sealed envelope from the safe and handed it to her. Inside was a single document, her birth certificate. Her father's name had been crossed out. In its place, in official ink, Li Junjie.